What if I told you the most passionate moments you shared weren't about passion at all? What if the chemistry, the intensity, the fireworks were part of a strategy? And before we dive deeper, if you're done settling for emotional confusion disguised as chemistry, hit that subscribe button and commit to becoming unshakable. When a narcissist approaches sex, it often isn't about connection. It's about control and validation. To you, intimacy might mean emotional closeness, trust, and mutual pleasure. To them, it's frequently about securing admiration and reinforcing their self-image. They crave the feeling of being desired because it confirms their worth. Your attraction becomes proof that they are powerful, irresistible, superior. The act itself can feel intense and magnetic, but the underlying motivation is different. Instead of asking, "How can we connect?" they're unconsciously asking, "How can I win?" This is why the sexual dynamic can feel performative. They may focus on impressing you rather than understanding you. They might push for escalation quickly, not to deepen intimacy, but to establish dominance in the emotional space. Once they sense your attachment strengthening, they often feel a surge of security, not because they feel bonded, but because they feel validated. That validation acts like fuel. The painful part comes later. When validation becomes routine, the effort may fade. If admiration drops, frustration rises. If control feels threatened, withdrawal can begin. What looked like passion was often a strategy to secure emotional leverage. Understanding this shifts everything. It allows you to see that the intensity wasn't proof of love, it was proof of their need for affirmation. And once you recognize that difference, you stop internalizing the confusion and start reclaiming your emotional power. Narcissists are often highly observant when they want something, and in the early stages of a relationship, they pay close attention to your desires, fantasies, insecurities, and emotional triggers. When it comes to sex, this attentiveness can feel intoxicating. You might think, "Finally, someone who gets me." But what feels like deep compatibility is often strategic mirroring. They reflect your preferences back to you, adopting your interests and presenting themselves as your ideal partner. If you value emotional depth, they become tender and expressive. If you crave adventure, they become bold and spontaneous. If you're drawn to dominance or vulnerability, they lean into that role effortlessly. The key is that they are not revealing themselves. They are adapting to you. This creates a powerful illusion of alignment. You feel seen, understood, even uniquely matched. That sense of being perfectly chosen strengthens your emotional bond quickly. The problem is that mirroring isn't the same as authenticity. Over time, maintaining that carefully crafted persona becomes exhausting or unnecessary once they feel secure in your attachment. The passion or specific behaviors that drew you in may fade, leaving you confused. You may wonder what changed or whether you did something wrong, but what changed wasn't you. It was the need to perform. Recognizing this pattern helps you slow down future connections. Real compatibility reveals itself gradually and consistently. It doesn't depend on someone flawlessly embodying your every desire from day one. Genuine intimacy grows. It doesn't mirror and then disappear. The intensity at the beginning can feel like destiny. The chemistry is electric, the attraction overwhelming, the connection almost cinematic. You may feel chosen, desired in a way you've never experienced before. But with a narcissist, that intensity is often the hook. It's not about building something steady. It's about accelerating attachment before you have time to evaluate what's happening. They move fast, deep conversations early, sexual escalation quickly, grand promises before real foundation exists. The speed creates emotional fusion. Your brain releases dopamine, oxytocin, adrenaline, the same chemicals linked to addiction. You mistake that biochemical rush for compatibility. It feels powerful, even transformative, but intensity is not the same thing as intimacy. True intimacy builds slowly. It involves consistency, vulnerability, mutual understanding. Intensity, on the other hand, can be manufactured. Compliments are amplified. Physical connection is heightened. Boundaries may be tested subtly. The goal is to create an emotional imprint so strong that you bond before you can question it. Once you're attached, the dynamic often shifts. The effort that fueled the intensity may decrease. The warmth may cool. You find yourself longing for the beginning, trying to recreate those early sparks. That's part of the trap. The contrast between the high and the withdrawal strengthens your attachment even more. When you understand this, you stop confusing speed with depth. You recognize that sustainable passion doesn't require chaos. Real connection feels steady, not overwhelming. And when something moves too fast to think clearly, that's usually the sign to slow down, not lean in harder. When control starts to slip, withholding sex can become a silent weapon. In the beginning, intimacy may have been frequent, intense, even overwhelming. You felt desired, prioritized, wanted. But once a narcissist senses that you're emotionally invested, or worse, beginning to question them, the dynamic can change. Affection decreases. Initiation slows. Physical closeness becomes inconsistent. And suddenly, you're left wondering what happened. This shift is rarely random. Withholding creates insecurity. It destabilizes you. You start asking yourself if you did something wrong, if you're less attractive, less exciting, less enough. That internal questioning pulls your focus inward instead of outward. Instead of evaluating their behavior, you start trying to fix yourself. That's the power of the tactic. Sex, in this context, becomes transactional. When things go their way, intimacy returns. When they feel criticized or challenged, distance appears. The message is subtle but clear. Closeness is conditional. Over time, this conditions you to associate compliance with connection. You may try harder, give more, silence your needs just to restore warmth. Healthy relationships don't operate on reward and punishment systems. Desire doesn't disappear as a form of discipline. In a secure bond, intimacy is an expression of connection, not a bargaining chip. Recognizing withholding as a control strategy helps you detach emotionally from the confusion. It reminds you that genuine attraction doesn't require you to earn back affection. It flows naturally when two people feel safe, not when one person is trying to regain approval. For a narcissist, sex can become less about shared pleasure and more about performance and comparison. Instead of approaching intimacy as something collaborative, where both partners explore, communicate, and grow together, they may unconsciously turn it into a competition. They want to be the best you've ever had, not just good, not just satisfying, the best, because being the best reinforces superiority. This competitive mindset shifts the energy in subtle ways. They may ask about your past partners, not out of curiosity, but to measure themselves. They might exaggerate their experience or focus heavily on proving their skill. Compliments from you aren't simply enjoyed, they're collected like trophies. The bedroom becomes another arena where they must dominate, impress, and win. The problem is that competition kills collaboration. Real intimacy requires presence, attunement, and mutual responsiveness. But when someone is focused on outperforming an imaginary rival, they aren't fully tuned into you. They're focused on how they're being perceived. You may feel pressure to react in ways that protect their ego. You may hold back honest feedback because you sense their fragility beneath the confidence. Over time, this creates emotional distance. Sex starts to feel like something you participate in rather than co-create. The warmth of connection is replaced by the tension of performance. Healthy sexuality thrives on partnership, two people building something together. When it becomes about status and comparison, it stops being about closeness and starts being about validation. And that shift changes everything. True sexual intimacy requires more than physical exposure. It requires emotional exposure. It means being seen in your insecurities, your desires, your imperfections, and still feeling accepted. For a narcissist, that level of vulnerability can feel deeply threatening. They may appear confident, even fearless, but underneath that exterior often lies a fragile self-image they work hard to protect. Emotional nakedness risks cracking that image. In the bedroom, this can show up as avoidance of genuine emotional depth. They may keep things exciting, adventurous, or highly performative, but steer away from moments that require softness or emotional surrender. If you try to slow down and connect, eye contact that lingers too long, conversations about feelings, expressions of deeper attachment, they might deflect with humor, distraction, or escalation back into purely physical territory. Why? Because vulnerability equalizes. It removes the hierarchy of control. When two people are emotionally open, neither is dominating. Both are exposed. For someone who relies on control to feel secure, that equality can feel unsafe. So they maintain a layer of emotional distance, even during intense physical closeness. You might sense this as a subtle emptiness afterward. The experience may be technically satisfying, yet something feels missing. That something is emotional reciprocity. Healthy intimacy blends passion with openness. It allows both partners to be strong and soft at the same time. When vulnerability is absent, connection stays shallow. And without emotional depth, physical closeness can never fully satisfy the heart. At the end of the day, this isn't about blaming, shaming, or turning intimacy into something cynical. It's about clarity. When you understand that a narcissist may use sex for validation, mirror your desires to hook you, create intensity to fast-track attachment, withhold affection to regain control, compete instead of collaborate, and avoid true vulnerability, you stop personalizing the confusion. You realize it was never about you being not enough. It was about them needing constant reinforcement. The most dangerous trap isn't the passion. It's the illusion that passion equals depth. Chemistry can feel explosive and still be empty. Intensity can feel powerful and still be manipulative. Real intimacy doesn't leave you anxious, guessing, or trying to earn back warmth. It leaves you feeling safe, steady, and chosen without conditions. When you see the difference, you raise your standards. You stop chasing the high of emotional roller coasters and start valuing consistency. You stop mistaking adrenaline for alignment. You choose partners who don't need to win, dominate, or perform, but who are willing to be seen, flaws, and all. That's the shift. From confusion to clarity, from craving validation to embodying self-worth, from being pulled into someone else's ego game to standing firmly in your own power. Because the real secret narcissists don't want you to know is this: once you recognize the pattern, it loses its grip. And when you stop playing the game, you finally take back control of your heart, your body, and your standards.